Hello and welcome to a special edition of Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV, where we will be having a town hall interview with Auburn University President Stephen Leath. Thank you so much, President Leath, for joining us today.
I'm delighted with you today, Ken. This is great.
President Leath, a lot of our students that reached out to us asking about questions and things of that nature for you really wanted to know just some personal information about you. So could you begin by just talking a little bit about kind of what sort of things you like to do in your free time when you're not doing things for the university?
Well, there isn't a lot of free time because in these jobs, they're a lifestyle choice, and no matter how much you do and how happy you are about what you've accomplished, there's always more things you could do. So I don't have a lot of free time. I am an archery nut. People know that. I do like shooting my bow and going to the archery range, which is a lot of fun. I like walking the dogs with my wife. My wife and I also love public gardens. We're lucky to live next to the Arboretum and have beautiful grounds around our house. So those are some of the things that we do when we have some free time.
And now that you're going into about your second year here at Auburn University, starting in June, how have you enjoyed the Auburn community and then also just the state of Alabama as a whole?
We've really enjoyed it. It takes a little while to get settled in a new community. Like you say, it's been almost 2 years, and we've been in the house a year now this month. And that made a big difference to get settled and feel like you could call it home. And when I first came, we traversed the whole state from Huntsville to Mobile a couple of times, but they were quick stops, and you didn't feel like you'd really gotten to know the state. But over the last couple of years, we've spent much more time in different areas, been to some of the rural areas, and feel like we're Alabamians now. It's fun.
Well, I wanted to start my first question by talking a little bit about Auburn University's trustees at the last trustee meeting expressed a little bit of concern over Governor Kay Ivey's proposed budget, which really gives Auburn University only about a 5% increase compared to roughly 11% with some universities such as Athens State and then 7% with the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Senator Arthur Orr, who serves as the chair of the Finance and Taxation Education Committee, really criticized some of the comments by the Auburn University Board in a recent interview, saying, so it's a little bit perplexing that they would want to call out Athens State and a couple of $100,000 in appropriation versus Auburn's current budget, which is over $1 billion. Could you talk a little bit about what your response to Senator Orr's comments, recent comments, and then also just your response overall to Governor Ivey's budget?
Sure. I think the concerns by the trustees are fully justified. I think what's been lost in all of this is the fact that there's one school that educates more Alabamians than any other school in the state, and for that matter, the world, and that's Auburn. And I feel, from a philosophical point of view, that Alabama tax money ought to follow Alabama kids. And if we have more Alabama kids than anyone else, it seems reasonable that we would get an appropriate increase. So the fact that we're far less than some schools, when our metrics are good in terms of graduation rates, retention rates, and we have more Alabama kids, it's somewhat nonsensical to figure out why our allocation is smaller percentage-wise. So we are disappointed, and we're working through a process. The legislative process is kind of long. It's more of a marathon than a race. We're trying to work with the House and Senate to change those budget numbers.
Many universities across the nation have been criticized for blocking conservative speakers on campus and limiting the free speech rights of some students and faculty members. Auburn University has been recognized recently by FIRE as kind of a leader in the free speech movement. How are your administration really working to enhance free speech on campus? And it seems as if that's a kind of a priority of your team.
It is a priority. I think it's a fundamental tenet of society and certainly higher education. Public university people should be free to express their opinions and have discourse. Now, the rub comes, I think, when we're not civil. And so we've been trying to promote civil discourse where we really have intellectual discussions. Some of the things we may hear we may not agree with, we might even find somewhat offensive, but the only way we're going to really understand these arguments or make progress adjusting them is to discuss them intellectually and the merits of the argument. So as much as we can do things like critical conversations where we bring people into campus with different views of the world and let our students, faculty, and staff listen and think about it and talk about it, the happier I am.
New University of Alabama system chancellor Fess St. Johnson recently announced that their system would be imposing a historic in-state tuition freeze across their campuses. They have roughly 3 campuses across the state. Auburn University's annual in-state tuition has gone from roughly about $7,000 during the 2008-2009 academic year to now being almost $11,000. What is the university doing in order to streamline costs, which is something that you've talked about as a priority of your team, and then was also something you talked about during your time at Iowa State as well? And would you ever possibly support a freeze in the future for Auburn's in-state tuition?
Sure, a few points about that, Ken. One, in 2008 when you started, we had about $100 million more in state funding than we do now. We've gotten some of that back, but nowhere near. So we want to provide access and affordable education for our students, but without quality, that's not a good value. So we've got to find a way to pay for the expenses, and that's some of the reason tuition has risen. That said, I'm a low tuition guy. I would rather not raise tuition, and we're looking for ways to do that. One way would be to plus up this legislative issue. We can go from 5% to 7.5%. It somewhat mitigates how we have to raise tuition. Nobody likes to raise tuition. I certainly don't. Now, that said, there's a couple ways to deal with the budget. One is to have more revenue, whether it's from the state or tuition. The other way is to cut costs. And if we can cut costs without affecting the academic mission or the classroom, then that's what we should be doing. So I have charged Ron Burgess, General Burgess, who's my chief operating officer, to finding efficiencies. And he is working hard on that. He's been wearing 2 hats as my chief of staff and operations. Now that we have a dedicated chief of staff, General Burgess is completely focused on efficiencies, and we're starting to uncover more and more, and I think you'll see some real positive trends. I'd like to be the most efficiently run university we can be.
What are some things that you and General Burgess have kind of talked about? Are there some things specifics that y'all have been kind of focusing on?
Well, for one thing, we're too process oriented. Over the years, like a lot of large institutions, new rules come in, new ways come in to do things, and we often don't clean up the old things. So we have redundancies and too many steps in the processes. So the more efficient we can make the processes, the better. We're also trying to do things, for example, like have templates for standard forms or job descriptions, so we're not constantly spending time and salary recreating the same thing, where we can move quickly. So you'll see a number of areas where I think we'll see efficiencies.
Also, in relation to in-state students, a major aspect of the university's newly released strategic plan focused on helping to ensure students from Alabama's rural counties are able to attend Auburn. What are some ways that y'all are working to try to kind of tackle that and see, obviously since it's in the strategic plan, it's a big mission for the university. What is kind of some of the importance of that?
Well, we are a land-grant university, and land grants were formed back under President Lincoln's time to give children of common folks, everyday folks, a chance for a high-quality education. If we don't reach out and give access and affordable options to the rural kids, we're failing in our mission. And we've not done as well on that as we could. So we're trying to figure out how do we do this. Now, one aspect of that is we've just got a dynamic new leader for enrollment and admissions, and Joffrey Gaiman has joined the team, so we're looking to her for some leadership. But you'll see more outreach and recruiting efforts in the rural counties. You'll see an emphasis on need-based aid, things that have prevented some students from coming here. And you'll see a holistic approach develop over the next, really, by fall semester, that will reach out to these kids.
We've seen that Alabama's had some education issues in the past. There's been some pretty high turnover in the state superintendent of education positions over the past 10 years. Does Auburn want to play a role in the K-12 system in this state increasingly?
Well, not to a large extent, but remember that many of the K-12 teachers are educated right here at Auburn University. So it's critical that we interface with the other schools that have education programs, interface with the State Department of Education and others to make sure we're training students to be teachers in the best way, enable them to be fully successful. And that needs to be an integrated approach. We can't do that in a vacuum. So you'll see us very active in that set, but not in a meddlesome way.
All right, perfect. Another major initiative that your team has put into place, and is something that you've spoken a lot about since you've been here at Auburn, is research and development here on campus. Could you talk a little bit about the push for research and development through your administration and some of the specific goals that y'all are trying to achieve with that?
Sure. Well, I am interested in research. It's dear to my heart. If you take a land-grant university like Auburn, we have three fundamental tenets: education, research, and then delivering that research through extension or engagement. That big one in the middle is research, and it plays into everything we do. It's hard to recruit and retain the best faculty if they don't have a chance for scholarship in their field. That scholarship contributes directly to the information the students are getting. They're getting the latest and greatest, especially in the STEM fields. And it also creates a reputation which actually adds value to your degree when you leave. So we wanted to be considered a Research One university, which puts us in the nation's elite universities. And we're able to accomplish that goal over the last couple of years. And I think that's going to not only add prestige, but more importantly, it adds value to your degrees. It allows us to recruit and retain the best faculty. And then the other side of that is, what does this all mean in a practical sense? Well, we want to solve problems for society. We want to keep jobs, create jobs, put out new technologies, improve water quality in the Gulf. All these things come out of our research effort. So we really have a mission at our very core as a land grant to move Alabama and the country forward, and much of that comes through our scholarship.
And what are some of the real big things that some of the programs and all y'all were able to do in order to get that R1 classification? Are there some things that are required in order to achieve that?
Sure, they look at research productivity. They look at graduate students, especially PhD students, publications, the amount of funding, external funding you get. So one, we did a better job of recording, assessing, and reporting our successes. We've been too humble in the past. We put some initial programs in place like the President's research initiative, what we call our PAIR initiative, to foster multidisciplinary research here and allow us to apply for and to get big grants. We put a program together to recruit more PhD fellows. So we put some proactive steps in place, and there'll be more to come. With our new Vice President of Research, you'll see efforts in matching money for grants, equipment grant money, these types of things. But it was a multifaceted approach and a real focus.
We're going to take a quick break here. You're watching Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. We're joined by Auburn University President Stephen Leath. We'll be back in just a moment.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Green red hat. Oops. Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt. Oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants. Oops.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. Talk with your doctor to create a treatment plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
After 15 years of smoking, Eva Marie quit. There's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back to a special edition of Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. I'm your host, Ken Ward, and today we're joined by Auburn University President Stephen Leath. Thank you so much, President Leath, for joining us.
Thrilled to be here.
President Leath, before the break, we were talking a lot about research and development here on Auburn's campus. Could you talk a little, you were saying about how for the average student, the increased research and development could possibly result in a better standing of their degree. Could you talk a little bit about that and how that might be able to help them when getting future employment and things like that?
Sure. When we focus on the undergraduate education, there's many facets of that, but they all kind of relate back to your faculty. And so the perception in the world of your faculty is often related to their scholarship, their accomplishments in the field. So as we grow research and our faculty scholarship, publications, and reputation gets larger and better, people look at graduates from that university as prestigious. So there's a role in that. But even more importantly, when our faculty have robust research programs, the number of students in working in research labs as interns, as student workers, or on undergraduate research projects goes up. And that adds a whole holistic experiential portion to their education and makes them more attractive to employers.
Auburn University has seen a pretty large increase in enrollment over the past several years, not only during your term as president, but also during President Gouge's term. Mm-hmm. What does the university plan on doing over the next few years in order to make sure that they adequately accommodate this large increase in enrollment, but also make sure that the average academic standing is still rigorous as is expected by previous years in Auburn University?
Well, a couple of things. One, there's no real intent right now to get much larger. Part of the recent growth the last couple of years is actually do a really good thing. Retention rates are up. And so the students that are coming in, we're doing a better job of picking students, helping students, and mentoring them along the way, so they're finishing at a higher number. We also have far more employees than ever before actually rolling in school while they're employees here, so the numbers have grown that way. So you won't see a huge attempt to grow, but we may grow as we improve in these areas. What was the second part of your question there, Ken? I'm sorry.
Just about how the university plans on making sure that the academic standard is still rigorous, even with this increased growth.
I think the biggest thing is we can't lose sight of our ratio of faculty to students, which is somewhere around 19 students for each faculty member. So we are going on, as you probably heard, a big hiring push to hire 500 faculty, tenure track faculty, in a 5-year period. Now that won't be all new faculty, but as we grow the faculty through this push, we hope that our faculty-student ratio looks better than it has for the last few years, and that will be a big advantage to our students.
Has Auburn's faculty to staff ratio, is it kind of lower than that of most peer institutions, or is it kind of larger? How does that kind of relate?
It's probably right about the middle. There's schools that have 17-to-1 type ratios, and there's schools that are, of course, much higher. But I think we'd be better served if we could get it in a 17-to-1 ratio, and that's what we're going to try and do.
When it comes to the overall student experience, recent reports have talked about things such as how Auburn University's graduates after 3 years say that roughly 90% of them say they would do their experience at Auburn again, which is much higher than most institutions. Sure. What ways do you see that the Auburn student experience can not only maintain that positiveness also, but also grow in the next few years?
Well, we're delighted to see those numbers. I think part of that is attributable to the fact that many of our students are involved and engaged outside the traditional classroom. We have lots of club opportunities, things like you're doing yourself. We need to continue to foster and push that culture where students get involved. The most engaged students are the ones that are most successful in the end. And part of the whole Auburn family and Auburn culture is to not just come here and go to class, but to really be immersed in this atmosphere and family. So we'll continue to put an emphasis on being involved and staying involved.
Also, when it comes to staying involved and being on campus, in your installation address, you mentioned wanting to increase on-campus housing, especially for freshman students. What are some ways that you are working with some of the team over at Student Affairs and maybe also with facilities in order to accommodate that growth and ensure that students have adequate on-campus housing opportunities?
That's a great question. You're spot on. This is a complex issue that involves facilities, it involves student affairs, campus planning. We do want high-quality student housing. My goal was for any freshman that comes to Auburn that wants to live on campus, we should be able to afford them that opportunity. And right now, we can't do that. So the immediate challenge is to build some new beds to replace some of the aging beds in the Hill. The Hill is our least desired location, and it is old. And so we're going to move relatively quickly to start putting up beds to replace the Hill beds, maybe a few years before we can get to that goal of adding beds. But we also want to be mindful of our partners in the city and balance what's happening in the city with private housing versus what we're doing here. But I think we're in a pretty good place there.
And when it comes to the Hill project, is that kind of a renovation of the existing facilities or wanting to replace by completely tearing down and things like that?
I think you'll see those facilities completely replaced. When we pushed a pencil and thought about what it would take to make the Hill a modern residence hall, it just didn't make sense to renovate them anymore. It makes sense to replace them.
Alabama remains one of the poorest states in the nation. It's the largest land-grant institution in the state, like you said earlier in our interview. What are some things that Auburn University is doing or can do in order to help aid the citizens of the state in all 67 counties beyond kind of some of the normal things the university does through possibly the extension service and things of that nature?
Well, we don't want to discount extension because we do have offices in all 67 counties. But this goes back to our scholarship. So we could look at for example, our Rural Studio Initiative that's out in the state helping build and design affordable housing for people that don't have other alternatives. We have scholarship activities. For example, we've got a grant now with CDC, Center for Disease Control, to look at obesity, especially in African American populations in rural parts of the state to improve health and longevity. So you'll see us all over. Another example down at the coast, we have a robust research program that we're really standing up oyster farming as a commercial venue. So I just can't detail all the things we're doing, but you'll see a really exciting fun project I would like to mention, and that is that we are in close partnership with the FBI to really grow our canine program, and you'll see a great new partnership and new facilities coming up at Huntsville as part of our Huntsville research effort. So we are all through the state, and we will continue to be. We are dedicated to the state of Alabama.
You know, we saw former Attorney General Jeff Sessions visit during his kind of last few weeks in that position and see the canine program, I believe.
Right, he did.
Over in November.
Yep.
We were talking a little bit earlier about on-campus things and things of that nature. Over the past year, there's been a few high-profile security instances on the campus area, whether it be the shooting over by the McDonald's on Magnolia or the tasing incident that happened right here by this building at the Student Center. What are some things that the university is doing in order to prioritize student safety and really make sure that students have a safe overall campus environment?
That's a hugely important question because the safety of our students is paramount, and that's something, you sometimes talk about what keeps administrators up at night. Well, it's student safety. There's a lot of times I'll sleep with the phone by my bed just so I can be on top of things. But we do have a good, close partnership with the city of Auburn, and we have hired a new, very dynamic leader of campus public safety, and Kelvin King, who came to us after long service with the FBI. He's brought a high level of professionalism, knowledge, and he's putting some programs in place from training to other programs to help ensure safety. You'll also see us being more proactive. For example, you may have seen my note to the students recently about ride-sharing services. Make sure that's your ride. What happened in South Carolina was tragic. We want to make sure our students are always thinking, is this the car for me? Do they know my name? If they don't get in it. So you're going to see a number of tentacles go out where we're going to be pushing student safety from a number of aspects. And hopefully, we'll have no issues, but we want to be as vigilant as possible.
And when it comes to transportation, whether it be ride sharing or also just the normal Tiger transit system, we had Director of Transportation Services Don Andre come a few weeks ago talking about the new ride sharing program the university is putting into place, and then also the new contract that will be coming up with the transit providers. What are some things that you as president kind of want to see in both of those programs going forward?
I want to make sure that first and foremost they're safe. Like, for example, we put cameras in all the Tiger Transit buses. So we want to make sure they're going to the areas where the students want them. Want to make sure there's no long waits, especially at night or on weekends when people are waiting for any of our ride-share services. Those are the most critical things.
Also, when it comes to student safety, sometimes people tend to think about Greek life. There's been some high-profile hazing incidents, not really on Auburn's campus, but on other SEC schools' campuses across the nation in the past kind of decade or so. What is kind of your approach to Greek life and your kind of overall thoughts on Greek life here on Auburn's campus?
Well, we have a strong, robust Greek system here at Auburn, and if you look historically at our campus leaders, student leaders, disproportionately high level come out of the Greek system. So the Greek system is producing great students and great leaders. And we certainly don't want that to stop or in any way be diminished. But you're absolutely right. Some terrible things have happened in a number of institutions. There's been problems at LSU, Penn State, other schools that we see, and there's another one in the news this week. We want to avoid those here. Now, fortunately, we've been having regular dialogue, both from Student Affairs and me, with Greek leadership. Had all the Greek leaders to my house for lunch not long ago. We'll have another such lunch. And they're taking some steps themselves, like the hard liquor ban they self-imposed. Credit to them, and a positive step. We want to make sure that all the Greek leaders know they have Dr. Woodard's and my support, but at the same time, they need to understand the heavy level of responsibility. The best way to solve any potential problems in Greek life is with the members and their advisors. But we will be there to support them any way we can, because we'd like to keep that robust system here.
And then we wanted to talk a little bit about, finally, when it comes to my last prepared question, finally, what do you see as the biggest short-term and long-term challenge facing the university here on campus?
I think long-term, we've got to figure out who we want to be and how big we want to be. We are a great institution. How many students can we handle and do it well? We certainly want to keep that great Auburn experience. So figuring that out will be a challenge. But it's a constant challenge. In the world I see it, either go forward or backwards, and we want to keep going forward, and we've done an excellent job of that for over 150 years. We want to make sure that trend continues. So first and foremost is making sure we take the strategic plan, really have a direction of where we want to go, goals we want to attain, and always be moving towards them.
And then finally, I just kind of wanted to open up the floor to you to talk about anything that you would like to say to the Auburn student body, the faculty members, the members of the community that might be watching this interview, anything that you want to let them know.
Well, I would say, one, it's a great university and it's in a great community. And the town and Gower relationships were very strong before I got here. They remain strong. I saw Mayor Anders at one of our events this morning. I say previous Mayor Hammond at lunch today. That constant dialogue between the city and the university is critical, because we want this whole package that we think of as Auburn to excel in the future. So I don't want the citizens to ever think we're not mindful that our success depends on the city of Auburn, and to some extent the city of Auburn's success depends on us. And city leadership and university leadership really get that.
Well, thank you so much, President Leath, for joining us, and thank you for joining us as well. You've been watching Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. I'm your host, Ken Ward. Thank you so much for watching, and War Eagle.